Mike, of course, with his trusty pal, Freddie. All right, ready to go?
Good morning, folks. I'm here to talk about our next book. As you may have guessed from my hat, it has to do with Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is the most widely recognized fictional character in history. There are so many books and movies about Sherlock Holmes since the death of Conan Doyle. It's unbelievable. I've contributed myself, and now we're going to launch a big one. It's Sherlock Holmes meets Captain Nemo, and they team up to stop a world war. The only reason we're able to do this is because, as most of you know, my crowdfunded books are finished before we start soliciting. We have fulfilled every book on time or ahead of time. This is only possible due to the efforts of two people. One, the artist Richard Bonk, who's brilliant, and two, my showrunner, Chris Brawley, whose site is Bleeding Fool, bleedingfool.com. I urge you to go there. But let's get back to Richard Bonk for a minute. Richard has a long, illustrious career drawing for Image, Marvel, DC. He did the first Private American book. He'll be doing the next Private American book. But when I gave him this script for Sherlock Holmes and Captain Nemo, he exploded. It was like he had been waiting his whole life to draw steampunk. This is far and away his best work. It's going to blow your mind. We're going to launch within the next 2 weeks. I wish I could show you some art now, but you're going to have to wait a little bit. When you do, your jaw's going to hit the floor. I have a long history with Sherlock Holmes. I was a member of the Baker Street Irregulars when I was a kid in Madison, Wisconsin, during high school. And we would meet once a week in a stone cottage in Shorewood to talk about Holmes and his contribution to literature. There's something about the narrative voice that Conan Doyle used. And by that, I mean the Victorian narrative voice, which was mostly Dr. Watson speaking. And Watson spoke in a Victorian style, which meant that it was indirect, oblique, fustian, and circumlocucious. And I can think of no phrase that better characterizes the Victorian style than "Good day, sir." I said, "Good day." Now, it's obvious to anyone who hears that the person's saying, "Piss off." But they're much too polite in Victorian England to come out and say that, unless, of course, you're the lower class. Another thing about Victorian England is the class consciousness which permeates everything, especially the Sherlock Holmes novels. Everybody knows their place. The lower classes are always tugging their forelocks. The upper classes are always ordering people around. It never changes, and nobody ever breaks their class rank. Of course, that's long gone. That's in the dustbin of history. But the amazing thing about Sherlock Holmes is he is with us, and he will always be with us. And he is updated for modern times. I'm speaking specifically of the BBC production that starred Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock Holmes. It's one of my favorite Holmes. It works brilliantly in the 20th century. No thanks in small part to Cumberbatch, who really gets into the role. But he's not my favorite Sherlock Holmes. My favorite Sherlock Holmes is Jeremy Brett, who starred during the 80s as Sherlock Holmes. And the thing about Brett was he seemed obsessed. And there's no question that Sherlock Holmes was on the spectrum. And by that I mean he suffered from Asperger's syndrome, which interfered with his ability to be intimate with people and also made him unbelievably intense. The only time he came alive was when he was working on a case. And if he wasn't working on a case, he became bored. And to alleviate his boredom, he would do drugs. He'd shoot up cocaine, hence the novel The 7% Solution, which is a good movie, and I recommend it. And there have been so many great actors who played Holmes. My first three are Jeremy Brett, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Basil Rathbone. But many others have played him as well. And if you're not familiar with Sherlock Holmes, you've heard of him. I mean, there's nobody out here that I'm talking to right now who has not heard of Sherlock Holmes. I doubt that there's any adult in this country that has not heard of Sherlock Holmes. But he's worth investigating. There's a reason he endures. There's a reason that Dr. Watson's narratives have such a compelling narrative voice. I urge you to investigate Sherlock Holmes and stand by, because in a little bit, we're going to launch Leviathan. That's the name of the novel in which Sherlock Holmes teams up with Captain Nemo to save the world. Thank you. Oh, yeah. One more thing.
What?
You can find all my books at baroncomics.com.
Okay, very good. And then what would, besides wearing a hat, another tip you would give to your audience?
Well, you may have heard this before, but always take a hat. But seriously, anybody who wants to write or draw, carry a notepad and a pen with you at all times, not a smartphone. Do not try to remember things by entering them into your smartphone. Carry a pen and pad and write them down by hand for a couple of reasons. One is it fixes it in your memory. And two, it's easy to find. You don't have to log through thousands of online entries you may have made over the past year. Keep those notebooks, put dates on them, put dates down when you write something, have it with you always.
Okay, all right. Well, stay tuned for, what did you call this Sherlock Holmes story?
Leviathan.
Leviathan, okay. So do you think it's going to come out this fall, or when?
We're going to launch within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. So stay tuned. Follow Mike on Facebook. Join his Facebook group. What is it called? Comics and Novels of Mike Barron.
The Comics and Novels of Mike Barron. I'm also on Twitter as @BloodyRedBaron. And I have a Substack column, Mike Barron. It's on Substack, which people seem to enjoy. And I just want to leave you with this one thought. Good day, sir. I said, good day.